I am. Good morning.
Good morning.
You've been up early this morning.
I always get up early.
You get up early. You're tweeting early, Donald.
I get up early. I get up nice and early.
Why are you tweeting early, Donald?
Because I like tweeting, because I like getting the word out.
Yeah, what word do you want to get out this morning?
Well, I think I've gotten the word out. You know, Hillary said some things, and I said some things, and now I go back to work, and I have a lot of fun.
It sounds like it. So let's talk about a couple of polls that have been out the past couple of days. The Fox poll that has you up a couple points. Then you've got this New York Times poll that has Hillary up a couple of points, but it looks like it's getting tight. The national race is getting tight between you two.
Well, and Rasmussen had a poll that had me up by, I think, 5 points yesterday. So we're doing well. We're doing really well. Getting tremendous crowds and enthusiasm. And, you know, it's sort of interesting because I talk about Hillary's bad judgment. I actually said that this morning to a lot of followers and a lot of people that agree with me. But she's got horrible judgment. And you look at what's going on. And
what's the worst example of her? You say she has horrible judgment.
Well, I can tell you a lot of examples, but one of them is Libya. Libya was an example. Libya is a disaster. And by the way, just in case you have any questions, right now ISIS has taken the oil from Libya. So we knock out Libya, and you knock out Gaddafi, and she thinks we did a great job, and it's just more destabilization.
Would you have not gone into Libya?
And ISIS has the oil.
Would you have stayed out of Libya?
I would have stayed out of Libya, yeah. I would have stayed out of Iraq, too.
And will you stay out of Syria?
I would have stayed out of Syria, and I wouldn't have fought so much for Assad, against Assad, because I thought that was a whole thing. I mean, you have Iran, which we made into a power. Right. Iran now is a power because of us, because of some of the dumbest deals I've ever seen.
So, Don, what I want to do here is...
So now you have Iran and you have Russia in favor of Assad, and we're supposed to fight the two of them. Right. And at the same time, we're supposed to fight ISIS, who's fighting Assad.
So there are a lot of people that say you have an inconsistent foreign policy, but it sounds pretty consistent here. You're, as far as what you've just said this morning, you wouldn't have gone into Libya.
Right.
You've said you wouldn't go into Iraq.
Right.
You say you wouldn't go into Syria. You wouldn't have fought Assad.
But I would go after ISIS, a big league.
But you would go after ISIS.
Right.
Even if you
know, ISIS, Joe, ISIS is fighting Syria. So you have some people, most people, they want to fight Syria and they want to fight ISIS at the same time, and they're fighting each other.
So what you're saying is Assad can stay in power. That's not your interest.
No, what I'm saying is we have bigger problems than Assad.
What your interest is, though, militarily, you'd tell the generals, go after ISIS, but we're not interested in replacing Assad.
I would say knock the hell out of ISIS, which we could have done originally. Knock the hell. Look, we shouldn't have been in Iraq. Bad decision.
Right.
Then the way Obama got us out was a horrible decision, the way we came out. And I would have said, and by the way, ISIS was created because of that, because they wouldn't take them in, because we had the wrong leadership. We put the wrong leadership in Iraq.
I want to get specific on Syria, because there is a divide in the foreign policy community. There are people like Lindsey Graham who say you've got to replace Assad and beat ISIS. There are others who are more realists who say, you know what, Assad's a horrible person, but he stays there. Our job is getting rid of ISIS. Is that where you are?
That's where I am. And by the way, Lindsey Graham called me up the other day. He was very nice. That was a very surprising call, but he was very nice. But I disagree with him on this. Look, we have Iran and we have Russia totally on the side of Assad. And that's not the reason I stay out necessarily, but certainly it's a complicating factor. But we have them totally on the side of Assad. We have to knock the hell out of ISIS. And if we're going after Assad and ISIS and they're fighting each other, people are going to say, what the hell are we doing?
All right, one more foreign policy question. You know, people like myself have criticized Barack Obama, Republicans have for 8 years, for not being good friends with our friends, but leaning over backwards to help our enemies, whether it's Iran or Cuba. This past week, a lot of people confused because you're talking about sounding like Obama saying you would go to North Korea and you'd talk to the North Koreans at the same time.
I wouldn't go to North Korea. I wouldn't go there.
Or you would talk. You would talk to them.
The last thing I do is go. I would never go to North Korea. I don't know who would say I would go there.
Okay, you won't go there. You'll talk to the North Korean leader.
Yes, I would.
Maybe he could go to your resort in Scotland and y'all could talk there. But anyway, you talk to him. But then on the other side of it, you're attacking Great Britain, our longest-running ally. Is there an inconsistency there?
I'm not attacking Great Britain. Where am I attacking Great Britain? I'm not attacking them at all. They asked me about the EU. I said, frankly, it's none of my business, and I don't even like answering it. But frankly, if I were Great Britain, I'd get out of the EU. I see what happened with the Great Migration, destroying Europe, and the EU had a lot to do with that. Personally, I'd get out, but I said I don't want that to influence the people of Great Britain.
You were going after David Cameron, though, their leader.
I didn't go after you. Show me where. He came after me a little bit, and by the way, he would like me now to visit 10 Downing Street. They put out that invitation about 2 days ago, so I'll do just fine with David Cameron. I think he's a nice guy. Okay. I'll do just fine, but they've asked me to visit 10 Downing Street, and I might do it.
Okay, well, that's interesting. That's news. I thought I had heard that you had said we might not have good relations with them.
We're going to have good relationships. We'll have better relationships than we have right now, but all of these countries will not be taking advantage of us like they are right now. You look at what's going on with China and Japan and Mexico. Everybody takes advantage of the United States, and we owe $19 trillion going up to $21 trillion.
We heard you saying Nabisco's going down to Mexico. You shouldn't have made an Oreo joke at Chris Christie's fundraiser.
What's the Oreo joke?
Come on, man.
What's this?
Chris is your friend.
You think what? You thought that was not appropriate?
Well, I just don't think you should have made an Oreo joke to Chris Christie. He's
I have a question. I have a question, Joe. Okay. Donald, we had former Defense Secretary and CIA Director Robert Gates on the show yesterday. I'm going to play for you a bit of what he had to say. He had concerns about both candidates, you and Hillary Clinton. Take a listen.
I think they are especially apprehensive about the unpredictability and the threats of Mr. Trump and some of the things he said, from having Japan and South Korea have nuclear weapons to breaking off the relationship with China and so on and so forth. These are all of serious concern, and the problem, the worry is that even before the election, countries begin to take steps to offset these dangers or these perceived shifts in U.S. policy in ways that put greater distance between ourselves and them in terms of cooperation in the future.
And Donald, I want to know what you think of those comments.
Well, the comments are wrong because he knows nothing about me. He knows nothing about what I said. I'm not a big fan of his, by the way, because you take a look at two things. Look at where our country is with years of him being involved. We are a mess, number one. I know he has a great reputation and all of that. All of these guys have a great reputation. They've been doing this stuff for 15 years. Look where our country is, okay? We need a new group with better thinking. Number two, as far as Japan and South Korea are concerned, all I'm saying is we defend them. They are paying us a tiny fraction of what it's costing. I want them to pay. I would love to continue to defend Japan. I would love to continue to defend South Korea. We have 28,000 soldiers on the line between North and South Korea right now. It is costing us an absolute fortune, which we don't have. We're a debtor nation. I would like them to pay up. They have a lot of money, both of those nations. We take in Japan's cars by the millions. South Korea sells us every time you buy television.
So you don't have a problem with the troops staying there. You just want Japan and South Korea to pay us for our presence.
I want them to pay up. Because we are not a country. This isn't 40 years ago and 20 years ago.
Right.
We are not a country that can afford to defend Saudi Arabia, Germany, the NATO nations, 28 NATO nations, many of which are not paying us and they're not living up to their agreement. Japan, South Korea, nobody. We're like the dummies that protect everybody. All I'm saying is we have to get reimbursed because we can't afford it.
But Donald,
and nobody says that. And Bob Gates, who I don't know at all, but Bob Gates has no idea. See, they're misrepresenting, and he's misrepresenting.
Bob Gates is one of the greatest foreign policy minds in history.
Oh, really?
And I think
Why? Because we're doing so well? You mean you think
Donald,
we're doing well with his foreign policy, Mika?
I think the worry also is just how you will be as president and present your positions and your words. And there are some concerns that you might be trigger happy with your words. Like, for example...
Oh, really? I'm the one that didn't want to go into Iraq, Mika.
I'm even talking about, for example, the tweet that you sent out yesterday morning.
What's wrong with him?
I will tell you what some might say.
Go ahead.
That it was very much generating hatred, focusing on the hatred and fear that terrorism brings to the American people.
But I said
maybe
another
perhaps
plane was
that
blown
first
up,
tweet.
and I can practically guarantee who blew it up. And another plane went down.
Donald, listen to yourself right now.
The mindset of a weak Hillary Clinton, which is 4 more years of Obama, is not going to do it for our country, Mika.
Yeah, and I'm asking you if there is any perhaps backing here to the concern that a lot of what you say is focused on hatred and fear and sort of generating more anger and churning it up. And perhaps, for example, that tweet, maybe you might have thought of the families that were suffering first.
Let me tell you what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the future. We cannot continue to let things like this happen. We are being taken advantage of by radical Islamic terrorists, and this world is changing. And another couple of planes go down, Mika, and you're going to have a depression worldwide, the likes of which you've never seen, because nobody's going to travel. There will be no anything. There will be no communication between countries, and you will have a problem the likes of which you've never seen. And I will tell you, 4 more years of a weak Hillary Clinton, and that's what she is, 4 more years of that, it will not work. It will not work. And all I did is point it out. And and when you find out what happened to the plane, it will be exactly what I said. That plane didn't go down because of mechanical failure.
Right.
I'm not saying it did.
Yeah, right. Speaking of not working, let's go to the guy who, when I'm not working 90% of the time,
he's just walking around.
It's like in charge. I just kind of walk around.
Nice, a good segue. Hey, Donald, it's Willie. Good to talk to you this morning. I want to ask you about something you said last night at Chris Christie's fundraiser, which is, quote, who the hell cares if there's a trade war? You've been open about a 35% tariff on exports from China and from Mexico. Most experts believe that would plunge China and Mexico into a recession, could perhaps put the United States into a recession. Are you concerned about the jobs that would be lost in this country because of a trade war?
Okay, ready? So China, we have a trade deficit with China of $505 billion this year. We have a trade deficit with Mexico, $58 billion. Not only that, they're killing us at the border and everything else. We all know that. The drugs are pouring across, et cetera, et cetera. People are coming across. Everybody's coming across, all right? They do nothing to help us, and they will. They'll end up being very good neighbors. We'll have a good relationship if I'm in there. But when we have a trade deficit with China of over $500 billion a year, I say, let there be something, because they're taking advantage of us, okay? We can't do any worse. So if we had a trade war, to be honest with you, it can't be worse than having a trade deficit of $505 billion. And I say that loud and I say it clear. And let me tell you what will happen. When we get tough with China, they will stop devaluing their currency, which is the biggest way that they beat us. That's their number one tool. They are absolutely killing us by devaluing their currency. They're absolutely making it impossible for our companies to compete with China. And by doing that, it's taking our jobs away. I mean, look at our country. Look at the real job situation, not the phony job with the 5% stuff. Look at the real job situation. I go out and I see communities that have been stripped of their jobs.
Donald, do you believe, though, if you put that tariff on Chinese exports, it would put the Chinese economy into a recession?
No, I don't.
You don't?
And I'm not sure that you'd ever have to do it. Look, I have been contacted by top people in China, and so is the United States government, by the way. And they're concerned with me. And guess what they're going to do? They're going to negotiate. They're not concerned with Obama because they've been ripping off our country for 8 years with Obama. They are very concerned with me, and they want to figure out what's going on. And I can tell you, top people have talked to me, and they said, boy, you have China in a very interesting position. They want to negotiate, Donald. I said, I know, because that's what I do. That's what I do, frankly, better than anybody else. When you have a guy like a Bob Gates that's been running foreign policy, I mean, he's been in so many administrations. I'll tell you another thing I don't like about Bob Gates, whether it's Obama or anybody else, and even Obama, when he writes a book and says bad things about everybody that he works for, I don't like the kind of guys that write books and say bad about everybody party they work for.
So
That's
we're
what he
going
did.
to put him down as undecided on Bob Gates for vice president.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care. I'm just telling you. I don't like that.
We heard you.
But more importantly, I don't like where our country is, and he's been there for many years.
You know what? He's kind of had Commander-in-Chief strapped around him. I mean,
dare to disagree.
You think things are bad now? Just think about how bad they would have been if he weren't there trying to resist the worst instincts of our last two commanders-in-chief.
Well, I think things are very bad now,
Yeah, okay.
and I think they're very bad
you like my
worldwide.
dad,
I think the world is a mess.
All right, let's go. Okay,
You like my dad?
We're running out of time, and we got to get around the table.
I want a quick button on this because that was an important thing you just said and very interesting, that the 35% tariff you've proposed may just be a negotiating tool and you may not ever implement it.
Well, I hate to say that because I hate to tell China that. But you know what? I'll tell China right now. I will implement it if they don't behave. And they are not behaving. They're devaluing their currency. Recently, 9 months ago, they gave the biggest devaluation in the history, biggest in 20 years, in 2 decades. And they are not behaving. They are not playing fair.
Right,
now, on top of that, they're building a major fortress in the South China Sea.
All right, so let me just say it for everybody. So, just so China knows, Donald is going to put on like an 80% tariff. He's going to screw you. Hold on, Donald, let me finish. Donald, you got to let me finish. Donald, you got to let me finish. You got to let me finish. You got to let me get to the second part of what I was going to say. But for all you economics professors and people writing op-eds and fretting and freaking out, he's negotiating. This entire campaign, look what he did to the Republican Party. He battered them. He abused them. They came whimpering to him like a beaten dog, licking his foot, begging him to please just pet him. It's what he does. It's called hard-nosed negotiating. So but China, we're going to kill you.
The Republican Party is really coming together and really unifying, and people are endorsing me now.
Yeah, they are.
That frankly, I was a little bit surprised when I see some of the people that are endorsing
I was surprised how
Mr. Trump, you're running against a rigged political system and a rigged economy. Bernie Sanders is running against a rigged political system and a rigged economy. You have a lot of animosity and distrust for Hillary Clinton. Bernie Sanders clearly has a lot of animosity and distrust of Hillary Clinton. Would you take a few minutes to talk to him and consider him as your running mate?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. You know, the one thing that Bernie Sanders and I have in common, 2 things, and I do have much bigger crowds than him, but that's okay. But we have the crowds. I actually do. Joe knows that, and Mika knows that. But he is second. I will say that. He's above any other Republican. But I will say this. We have one thing very strongly in common. We know that the United States is being taken advantage horribly on trade deals. The difference between Bernie and myself is that I know how to make those trade deals fantastic, and he doesn't. He has no clue.
But as your number 2, he could watch and learn from you.
But he's got too many other things in the bag. No, but I will tell you, Nicole, and I mean this 100%, and you saw that in many of the primaries where they do the polls. If Bernie loses, which he will because his system is rigged very badly, frankly, he should run as an independent. Bernie should definitely run as an independent. But Bernie, his people are going to vote, big percentages of the Bernie people are going to vote for Trump. You watch.
All right. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.